I'm Derek.
And I'm Noah, and you're listening to A Bite Of,
where we take our current favorite pop culture obsession and enjoy it one nibble at a time.
Ooh, old new nibble.
New old property.
Yeah.
Oh.
We are going back to our roots. We started with a book, and now we're doing a book again.
We started with a book, and then was the second thing that we covered Bly Manor. Mm-hmm. So we also covered a book in that season. Mm-hmm. And then since then, not much.
No, not many books.
Not many books. Midnight Club for Patreon, but that was it.
We talked about books. Yeah. We did stuff on Patreon for books, but now we're going back to it because Percy Jackson has a show coming out on Disney Plus. So why not cover the book?
You got to go to the source material.
Yeah. So this is the first, I think, official ABO book club. Yay!
We want to know what you're thinking.
So I like how you never give anything after you sing. You just sing. And then
I think I said plenty with that song. It spoke volumes. It was emotional.
So how these are going to work, we posted what chapters we're going to be reading and then the episode that comes out for those. So if you want to follow along, share your thoughts or whatever, you can go to our Discord. We have special book club channels on there. And then if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to do the Discord thing, just email your thoughts or whatever to abonibbles@gmail.com. So do that.
Send us your nibbles.
Yeah.
And we want to know yours.
Yeah. And you can tell us episode before, chapters before, whatever you're feeling. We're going to keep that email open. So it doesn't even have to be with the book club. So if you just have thoughts on anything that we've covered or are going to cover, send us an email. Get some mailbag segments going.
Remember mailbag?
Mailbag.
That was delightful.
Yeah. So we are going to go, we have the first 6 chapters in this one. We're covering the first six chapters of Percy Jackson, The Lightning Thief. First one.
Yeah.
Very, very first one.
Let me tell you something. So I read these not long after they first came out. I love them. I couldn't wait for the next volume to come out. Rereading it, apparently I remember nothing.
So I think that's one of the things that sparked us for doing this is we did read them a long time ago, like a decade more ago. And I don't remember much. I was reading it just right next to Derek and I was like, do you remember this? And he's like, nope.
Nope.
So this is going to be a fun journey. We're not going to spoil the whole universe or the end of the series or anything like that. We're going to go with what we're reading. We're going to try our hardest to not talk about things outside of it.
And I do think it works in our favor that we don't remember specifics because we can't really spoil things that we don't remember. So other than knowing literally basic plot points, I know none of the details.
All right. So before we get into this book, before we crack it open, we are on our way to 200 reviews, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So if you've not thrown stars our way, we would very much appreciate it if you did. Let us be in favor of our God and get us determined to be, 200 reviews, whatever that means. But they say you're not doing anything if you don't have the reviews. So go do that.
How dare they say that?
They do say that.
We're doing stuff.
Yeah, real Mrs. Dobbs, them.
Oh, honey. As she says in the book.
Oh my God. All right. So spoilers for the first 6 chapters of Percy Jackson.
Yes. Should I give us a little journey into the Jackson universe?
Oh,
how we got there? Yeah.
Oh my God, I forgot we used to do this.
Yeah, here we go. I'm telling you.
So
we're going way back.
A little preamble, a little appetizer before we get it. Go ahead. Yeah.
So the tale of Percy Jackson began its first adventure as a bedtime request from Reardon's son, Haley, reflecting on a prompt he would give to his 6th grade students where they would create a demigod. Yes, Rick was a teacher for 15 years before writing. Reardon told the tale about a stolen lightning bolt and a kid named Percy Jackson. He shares on his website that it took him 3 nights to tell the first heroic Jackson journey to his son. With another nudge from Haley to put Percy on the page, Rick decided to write about the demigod's epic escapade. Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, the first in the 5-part series, was published in 2005. It has since become a worldwide phenomenon and led to numerous spin-off series about demigods from all different mythologies, including Egyptian, Norse, and the list keeps going, circling back to the most recent installment, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Chalice of the Gods, which just came out this year.
Yeah, we have it.
We have it. We don't know if we need to read the other 800 books in between them if we're going to be spoiled. I think we probably do, but we might take our chances. Over 190 million copies of his books are in print worldwide, and rights have been sold into more than 37 countries. The first 2 books in the Percy Jackson series were made into movies in the early 2000s to mixed reviews. But now Disney Plus has created a series from the beloved books that will premiere this year on December 20th.
Yay. So we are, when this comes out, less than a month to Percy Jackson.
That's exciting.
I'm very excited.
Yeah, I can't wait to meet all these characters in the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be very cool to see how they are now and looking much more like 12-year-olds than they did in the movies, where they clearly made them 16 and 17-year-olds.
We're not going to talk much about the movies because, one, I don't think we've really seen the second one. I saw parts of it and I was like, can't finish it. And the first one we tried to rewatch and Derek fell asleep and I was like, you didn't miss much.
Till this day, I was just going to say, I still have not seen the entire first movie. I never saw it in theaters, but I was so excited for it that I purchased it on DVD. And then I got about 20 minutes into it and I was so furious that I never watched it.
Oh my God. I think we'll make some connections because a lot of the problems happen in these chapters in the movie. And yeah, we'll get to it.
Yeah. All right. So let us officially take a bite of Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, chapters 1 through 6. So chapter 1 is I accidentally vaporize my pre-algebra teacher.
So cool.
Accidentally. So a school trip to the museum goes haywire when a harpy saying honey wreaks havoc.
Ugh. Mrs. Dobbs.
Mrs. Dobbs. So, okay, one of my favorite things about this is that, not to jump to the series right away, but in the Disney Plus series, Megan Mullally is playing Mrs. Dobbs.
Mm-hmm.
Megan Mullally is famous, Emmy-winning performance as Karen in Will and Grace, where she always says, honey, what's this? Honey, what's going on? And in the text of the novel, Mrs. Dobbs says, honey.
Yeah.
I was like, they did that on purpose.
I also don't like it. For some reason, like when somebody calls anybody honey in that way, I'm like, that's so condescending and that's not right.
I couldn't figure out how she was saying honey, so I just kept hearing Karen Walker saying honey. You're going to die, honey. What was it like honey?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's fake sweet. That's what it is. It's like that artificial sweetener. It's not good for you.
Sweet and low.
Yeah.
It's the sweet and low version.
I really like the first page of this book. I love reading it now as an adult. I read it when I was a little older. These are middle grade books, right? So they're very easy to understand. They're very well written for a middle grade book. But I love the beginning, right? It has this thing of, Percy Jackson. It's he's narrating the whole book and it's a first point of view. So everything that we find out in the story is through Percy Jackson, which is kind of nice because we're not expected to know all this stuff or it's not jumping around between a bunch of things. It's just what Percy Jackson is experiencing. So we experience it as well. And I love in the beginning how he's like, if you see yourself in this book, hide, run, don't keep reading it. And I just think being a 12-year-old and reading that, it's like, oh, okay, cool. I'm going to keep reading it. Yeah.
And it's one thing to be reading a story in first person, but in those first few paragraphs, he's breaking the fourth wall of the book and he's speaking directly to the reader. Mm-hmm. He's like, look, this is what you're in for. You're not going to like it. Put the book down. And so it's a really fun introduction, like you're saying, as a kid, to have the main character talking to you.
Yeah.
And actually telling you, beware, don't turn the page. But like you're saying, kids just couldn't resist that.
No, I wouldn't resist. I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to keep reading it. Thanks. Okay.
Tell me more, Percy Jackson.
Yeah. And then he's like, if you think this is a work of fiction, then I guess carry on. And it's like, okay.
Or is it?
Because it is.
I always felt such a kinship to these stories because they take place in New York, in the beginning, and even Camp Half-Blood is actually set out on Long Island. So it always felt extra special to me.
I wonder, I know that, okay, so Rick is from San Antonio. He wrote these in San Antonio. I'm not too sure how good his geography is of New York or especially Long Island because the way he describes things or where Camp Half-Blood is, it's okay, that should be Riverhead-ish area. We live out in Long Island, so we could probably go to Camp Half-Blood if it actually existed. But I just love how there's ocean, and like a bunch of creeks. I'm like, where is where is this?
Yeah, sometimes I wonder, is it just a magical place so that it is like the foundation, if you were like going, if a realtor was there, is on Long Island, but once you cross the border, it's kind of its own
Unknown
realm.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, right? Because Percy and his mom live on the upper
east
side of Manhattan, and they love going to Montauk, which is the furthest point of Long Island, which takes like 5 hours to get there. And then Camp Half-Blood, they're heading to Montauk, and then Camp Half-Blood, Percy says something like, it must be on the North Shore, which is the opposite shore
of Montauk. Yeah.
So I don't know how far, whatever, we'll get into it later.
Yeah, we have a whole thing about, we haven't even gotten to Camp Half-Blood yet.
You're right.
So before we get to the stuff in Montauk, we find out that Percy is at Yancey Academy, and he's gone to different schools every time. He's in 6th grade, which is like crazy. My last memory of Percy Jackson was obviously the movie. And then rereading this book, I was like, well, he's not in 6th grade. Like, this dude is obviously a senior. So it is fun to actually get the story of how it was supposed to be told. He's a child. He's young. He's a tiny little kid. But also, he's at an academy for like troubled youths that are all rich. It's a very weird school. We don't spend much time there. It's there and gone. But he always gets trouble during field trips. And that's pretty much what this first chapter is. It's setting up his school, his best friend Grover, and going on a field trip. And they're going to the Met.
So they're still in the city. I don't know where Yancey Academy is located. It could be in the city, but it's also some sort of boarding school because he hasn't seen his mom in a long time. But yes, they're at the Met. And we also get a nice, I wouldn't call it an info dump, but we do get a little introduction into the setup of Kronos and his children,
which is important for later on.
Exactly. So, Rick Riordan gives us a little Greek mythology lesson in this first chapter, and we see that Percy knows a lot about Greek mythology. He's able to answer these questions. He gets it right.
Also because he's getting pushed to know this stuff from Brunner.
You're very right. Right, because Brunner is the Latin teacher, but yet always manages to
Greek mythology.
Weave Greek mythology there. He wears Greek armor at certain school events. So he's really putting it on heavy, like, Percy, pay attention.
Well, also, I mean, I think it just makes sense, right? It's nobody's taking a Greek course. So the next best thing is to be a Latin teacher to then like see if there's a demigod at the school.
Yeah. Well, I will say in New York curriculum, well, that just shows how good New York schooling is.
Or, the United States school system.
In New York curriculum, we did mythology in 5th grade.
Oh, yeah. We know. No.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So this kind of made sense. I'm like, it was part of our social studies classes, our history classes. So we did like Egyptian gods and Greek gods and things like that. So that makes sense. But why the Latin teacher would be teaching it, that doesn't really fit together, other than priming a young demigod to know his histories.
Yeah, we also find out that he has ADHD and dyslexia. Come to find out, it's not spoiler, but dyslexia because his brain is hardwired to reading Greek, and ADHD because that's just his battle reflexes. That's just his mind always being ready. I was like, oh, okay. Like that. I mean, like if you're a 12-year-old, and as most 12-year-olds are diagnosed with ADHD in these times, I'd be like, yeah, no, these are my battle skills.
Yes. I am always ready to defend my family, no matter what, or the classroom door, whatever is happening.
Do not give me the Ritalin. I am battle ready.
Give me a sword. Yeah. That's what I need.
Exactly.
It is kind of funny though, reading this, because you're like, oh, this is great. This is great neurodiversity representation. And then it's like, actually, no, it's not. It's demigod representation.
Exactly. So in this school trip, I like how Brunner puts Percy Jackson on the spot. And like he asks him questions and everything, and he gets kind of serious for a second. And this is where you can see, because again, it's a middle grade, it's very heavy handed and like, oh, there's more to this guy than it meets the eye, because he's saying this is vital for you to know this stuff while winking. Wink. Yeah. And he's just
shaking him.
And he's just talking to Percy.
Yeah. There's a whole class of students. What's the like horrible bully girl's name?
Nancy?
Bibbidi-gibbidi.
I think it's Boba Fett.
Boba Fett.
I keep saying Boba Fett in my head because it was very similar to that. She never comes back.
She never comes back, which is so funny. It's like she's such a big part of these like first two chapters, and she's so annoying, and we see her full name the entire time, but then she never comes back.
She's a jerk.
She's just an antagonist for these first two chapters. It's really funny. But we also are introduced to Mrs. Dodds, who's a big part of Percy starting his journey a little earlier than both Mr. Brenner and Grover thought he was going to. And she's described as this. Mrs. Dodds was this little math teacher from Georgia who always wore a black leather jacket, even though she was 50 years old, which is like, what? Like, why can't a 50-year-old wear a black leather jacket? Anyway, she looked mean enough to ride a Harley right into your locker. She had come to Yancey halfway through the year when our last math teacher had a nervous breakdown.
Yeah. It is really interesting. So there's this thing in Percy Jackson that these demigods and mythical beings or whatever use this mist for humans where it just like erases their memory or fogs it or clouds, whatever. And it's used a couple times. And I'm curious if that was used for when Mrs. Dobbs came in and also for when Brenner came in as well. So I know in the movie, it's very heavy-handed. They're like, oh, yeah, he just came here and like the mist, blah, 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 blah. But I do like these types of devices in these stories because it just excuses a lot. Like we don't need to know like how they got into that position. It's like there's magical mist and it just did it.
It's good enough.
Yeah.
The mist works for the middle graders. It works for us.
Yeah. So in this, the end of this school trip ends with, Mrs. Dobbs being like, can I talk to you? And she like speeds her way back into there, lures him into a place, and she turns into a fury.
Yes.
And I like the detail of them saying she was wearing a leather jacket. She has leathery wings.
Yeah.
So it was just really like a glamour of her wings. And he defeats her because Brenner gives him the pen that turns into the sword. And yay, but he vaporized his pre-algebra teacher. And he's like, what the fuck is going on?
Take that, lady.
I really like this introduction because like, in this series, there's so much exposition because it's not only explaining like who this mythical creature is, but also explaining how it fits into this world. So we get exposition a lot. But I like this one because it sets up who Percy is. It sets up that he doesn't know who his dad is. He has a best friend, Grover, who's kind of scrawny, also gets picked on. And he's just trying to make his way through everything.
Yeah.
But then also gives that high stakes thing at the end of the chapter of killing his algebra teacher.
Yeah. Just speaking of Grover getting picked on, I liked this one detail that was written. So it says, this is Percy speaking, obviously. I tried to stay cool. The school counselor had told me a million times, quote, count to 10, get control of your temper. But I was so mad, my mind went blank. A wave roared in my ear.
Wink.
Get it?
Wink.
A wave.
We're not going to spoil anything because in these 6 chapters, we don't really know too much, but I think you can like, who's the god of water?
Let's just say if Zeus was his father, it would say a thunder clapped in my ear or something like that.
Yeah.
But I agree that this first chapter is very strong in introducing us to the story. It is very much the start of our hero's journey who didn't know he was a hero. And so it's kind of like what just happened. You want to keep going forward to really figure out what is this world and who is Percy?
Yeah, I love these stories because we don't have too many American-based, those are world underneath our nose type stories. Most of those come from Europe, and that's just because of how their culture and, folklore and everything is. And I like that this one is like one of the ones that is like kind of takes things from another thing, but puts it in our perspective and is written by an American author. So it's fun. It's fun to read this and how he like changes it for like the Western civilization. But guess who's not going back to Yancey? Percy. He gets kicked out. And I love that he gets kicked out of this one. Is this in chapter 2?
I think so.
Okay. So I skipped ahead.
Yeah.
So let's go to chapter 2.
Chapter 2. 3 old ladies knit the socks of death. Percy's final days at Yancey have him overhearing whispers from Grover and Mr. Brunner. A bus breakdown begets a snipping sight of beguiling biddies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this really, he's hearing Grover, who he thought was just his best friend, talking to Mr. Brunner, and they're like, it's happening too early. They're coming for him. Something's wrong. And he has no idea what they're talking about.
And they mentioned the summer solstice and all of that. So the things we know is that Brunner and Grover are in cahoots, something with the summer solstice, and Percy is getting kicked out of Yancey. And I like that he's getting kicked out. He's like, I called him an old snot. That was the straw that broke the camel's back.
You're out of here, Jackson.
It's a school for troubled youths. I think that like they say worse things, but whatever. They have a bunch of money. There is like some interesting like classism that goes on in this school too, because like people talk about like their summer homes and everything. So, and Percy, we find out later that his mom just like worked at the sweet shop in like the train
Grand
station.
Central Station. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, even though he's with all these people, he still can't connect with them. But I like Percy's attitude because like he sees all of that stuff and he's just like, oh, they're just really annoying. I just want to keep my head down. So I want friends.
Well, and I think that's why he's attracted to Grover, right? Grover obviously doesn't fit in for reasons that we all know why. And so he's the only real sort of, I want to say person, but he's not a person. He thinks he's a person that he can really connect with. And so for him to overhear Grover talking about him with Mr. Brunner is surprising, and he almost doesn't really trust Grover anymore.
Right.
So once he gets kicked out, he then, with Grover as a 12-year-old, has to take a bus from wherever Yancey Academy is, maybe Westchester.
I think it's like in Jersey or something like that. Like it's not too far.
To the city to get back home.
Yeah. And Grover, we find out that like he can't fail again. We do hear that when he's talking to Brunner. So there's obviously something that he's done before that he didn't do too well.
There are stakes.
He's failing.
Yes,
currently.
For Grover. We also see Grover hand Percy a business card that says Grover Underwood, keeper, Half-Blood Hill, Long Island, New York. And then it has a phone number, which I wanted to actually call before we started recording this episode, but I didn't think of. But it's 800-009-0009.
I don't think that's a real number.
Wouldn't it be funny, though, if you call and it's like Grover Underwood?
Yeah, that would be nice. Maybe they're going to do something for the Disney Plus show. I guess. Right? Yeah, we'll see. So on this bus trip, it breaks down at some point and they get off the bus and there's these three ladies who we know as the Fates. It's very obvious who they are, and they're knitting these gigantic socks. Grover sees them, doesn't like them, but Percy sees one of them snip the cord while they're looking at him. They don't take their eyes off of him. And that's not good, because if you watched Hercules, you know that when a cord is snipped, that somebody's destiny and fate is to die. And Percy saw.
And Percy knows this too, because as we know, Percy is very... He knows all of the Greek myths and everything.
Mostly. I would say mostly. When he gets to Camp Half-Blood, he's a little fishy on the details.
Fishy?
Yes.
Nice.
A little fishy on the details. But so like Grover's freaking out and he's like, I'm going to walk you back to your place. Don't leave me. Of course, Percy ditches him. Ditches him.
Yeah.
Rude.
He's like, I don't trust you anymore. I don't know what your deal is. I'm going. I got to get home. And that's really chapter 2.
Yeah, it's him getting back to his mom's house.
Yeah.
Yep.
So chapter 3, Grover unexpectedly loses his pants. I didn't write that. That's the name of the chapter. My synopsis is, Gabe is abusive. Percy and his mother make way to Montauk directly into a storm. Grover shows his gams.
Oh, nice. Okay, so I love and hate. You know, there's a lot of similarities. If you're reading this, say you've only read Harry Potter, right? I promise I'm not going to bring up Harry Potter as much. But if you read Harry Potter and you read this, you kind of see some similarities. That's just how kid fiction, that's just how middle grade is. And most of these kind of stories, you need these mentors, you need this trio of friends that are going to be the big adventure. And you also need one of the parents to be married to a jackass.
Yes. So it seems that his mother, Sally, has... like Noah mentioned, she works at a candy shop. She's sort of fallen on hard times. I just want to read the description, our introduction to his mother.
Well, I want to preface this with, I love Sally. Sally is amazing.
We love Sally, but this is how she's described. Her name is Sally Jackson, and she's the best person in the world, which just proves my theory that the best people have the rottenest luck. Her own parents died in a plane crash when she was 5. And she was raised by an uncle who didn't care much about her. She wanted to be a novelist, so she spent high school working to save enough money for a college with a good creative writing program. Then her uncle got cancer, and she had to quit school her senior year to take care of him. After he died, she was left with no money, no family, and no diploma.
It's not necessary. And then on top of that, Percy's dad isn't there. We know why, but he's not there. So she couldn't even be with the person that she loves. She's lost a lot of stuff. But saying that, she could be just as bad as Smelly Gabe, and she's not. She is a supportive, kick-ass mother. I don't know why she's with Gabe, but whatever. But she could have been a nasty person, and she's not.
Yes. So this is one of the details that I completely forgot about. I completely forgot that Gabe existed, that there was this horrible stepfather that was basically, he's just, abusive. He's mentally abusive. He's emotionally abusive. He's verbally abusive. I'm sure he's physically abusive. And I'm just
it's not said, but it's implied.
I'm just like, why is she with him?
I think because this is just me theorizing, but obviously she knows about Percy and what he has to be because she knows about the camp, which we're going to get to. I think it's just because he's smelly, but it's just somebody that couldn't possibly tie them to anything that would alert them of him. I don't know if she did it to protect Percy, but that's the only thing I can think of because, I think she says something like, he's been good to us. And it's like, has he though?
Yeah.
I don't think he has.
Yeah. I want to read the introduction to Gabe here. So it says, finally, she married Gabe Ugliano, who was...
That's New York.
Yeah. It's basically he's an ugly guy who was nice the first 30 seconds we knew him, then showed his true colors as a world-class jerk. When I was young, I nicknamed him Smelly Gabe. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. The guy reeked like moldy garlic pizza wrapped in gym shorts.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so he's playing cards with his friends and he's being empty your pockets, give me your money. And even the friends are like, Gabe, the kid just walked in the house, stop being a jerk.
So not even, he's literally stealing from a 12-year-old as soon as he gets home. They haven't seen him for 6 months. He gets there and he's like, do you have any money? He's like, no. And he's like, you took a cab here. So he gives him the money. And it's just that's the type of person that's I hate him and I can't wait until they just he gets what he deserves. Please, dear God. His mom finally comes home and she knows that he's kicked out of Yancey. Of course he is. He didn't make it a full year this time, but almost did. And her way of punishing him is we're going to go to the beach. Let's go to Montauk. Again, amazing mother.
Yes. I feel we know Sally knows way more than she's letting on. And so it almost feels I wonder if it's a tradition whenever Percy gets kicked out for whatever reason, they go and escape for a little bit because maybe something has happened at the school, very much in this situation. Something has happened at the school that is linking him to his father and she's trying to protect him. So they need to get away for a little bit while the dust settles.
Not even that. There's a whole thing with blue food. So it's all on the tip of the nose. It's she knows. And also he loves blue food. It's blue cookies and blue pancakes and blue everything.
I do like that the blue food thing is really a snub to Gabe because Gabe went on some rampage about blue food doesn't exist. So she makes blue pancakes, blue cookies. She buys, blue corn tortilla chips. So it's almost like Sally hates Gabe as much as Percy does. But like you said, she's just doing it to sort of protect Percy in some way.
But also the ocean.
The ocean.
Yeah. I love how he threw that detail in there, but it's it's the ocean. We get it.
The ocean. I loved when Percy wants to retaliate against Gabe. He thinks to himself, maybe if I kick you in your soft spot and make you sing soprano for a week. He's talking about his testicles.
Ridiculous.
Yes.
It's ridiculous. So they make their way to Montauk. They're in their beachside house and a hurricane comes. There is some conversation that Percy and his mom have about the father. Not too much really goes on, but he left. He was lost at sea, ocean.
Or he lives in the sea.
But she doesn't give too much away. But then the hurricane comes and she wakes up and she's freaking out. Then who comes out the door? Grover.
And he's like, I was tracking you. Why did you leave me? I just had to go to the bathroom. Poor Grover. Grover's really been put through the ringer. And I love this Grover. Grover feels sort of like nerdy and scrawny and nervous, and you just can't help but feel for him.
That's one thing that I didn't like that they did in the movie. I think with the script and the characterization they gave these kids for Percy Jackson for the movie, I was like, what am I talking about? Grover and Annabeth are so mischaracterized that it's insane that these are our actual characters. And there's something more sweet and compassionate and relatable to this Grover than there was with the Grover in the movie, because he's just so cool and suave
and very much like a ladies.
I didn't like it. Like, they're supposed to be kids, and like they're just Anyway, so not only does Grover come through the door, but he comes through, and he where his legs should be, there's fur and clippity clappies.
Gorgeous. He's given us that little Mr. Tumnus realness.
Yeah, he says one of the last lines in this chapter is, because where his feet should be, where there were no feet, there were cloven hooves.
Dun, dun, dun. Cloven hooves.
So that brings us to chapter 4.
Yes, this one is titled, My Mother Teaches Me Bullfighting. Percy, his mother, and Grover try to beat feet, but a bull blocks their path. A golden light, a fight, and Percy's arrival at camp.
That's a lot of peas.
Sorry, my plosives. But
bees.
Listen, we're gonna have a hard time if we're covering Percy Jackson.
Yeah, just don't,
Oof. Oh my gosh.
We find out that the reason why his mom hasn't really told him anything and he's kept in the dark is because she says the less you knew, the fewer monsters you'd attract. This is what Grover had said. And she echoes that. And so they're going to Camp Half-Blood now. There's a hurricane. They know that they're after them. And Percy is so confused. He's asking questions and like they're not really answering it. They're like, we are in trouble. I can't answer this now. And it's like, well, you should have
There's no time to explain.
Exactly.
We have to go.
Exactly. So we find out that not only a hurricane is raging and it's a big storm. They're trying to get to Camp Half-Blood from Montauk all the way over there. It's going to take a little bit. But there's a Minotaur after them. Big old Minotaur. The Minotaur.
Yes.
The.
And so this is the description of the Minotaur that I really enjoyed. Glancing back, I got my first clear look at the monster. He was 7 feet tall, easy, his arms and legs like something from the cover of Muscle Man magazine. Bulging biceps and triceps and a bunch of other seps, all stuffed like baseballs under vein-webbed skin. Oh my God. He wore no clothes except underwear. I mean, bright white Fruit of the Looms, which would have looked funny, except that the top half of his body was so scary. Coarse brown hair started at about his belly button and got thicker as it reached his shoulders. No, Percy!
So
he's a real bull.
Very descriptive for a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Also, wow.
Excuse me? Tidy whities? Furry worry?
In the rain?
In the rain? Stop, Percy.
Okay, let's stop sexualizing the Minotaur.
I mean, maybe there's something wrong that when I read that, I was like, huh? But I mean, it's on the paper. It's in black and white.
Yeah. So they crash. Grover is just completely useless from here on out. He's like, not saying he's useless, but he's useless. He's on the ground.
Yeah, he gets swatted, and that's about it.
It does come back. Him not fully like taking Percy to Camp Half-Blood is a factor in his story later on. So it is important. But just like the title says, his mom teaches him bullfighting. She tells him at the last second, just dodge out of the way, which I think most of us kind of know from just like stuff like this.
It's also very T-Rex in Jurassic Park. Yep. Their sight and hearing are terrible, so just don't move too quickly. Don't get, you can get away from them, whatever. But it's very much like bullfighting.
Yeah.
When he charges, jump out of the way. And so there's questions here that I wonder, like, how does Mama Jackson know so much about this stuff? Did she train in some way? How did she kind of come up to know that I mean, obviously she knows that gods are real, but that minotaurs can come after you and this is how you defeat them.
Yeah, I think that's a question that will probably get answered later. Maybe not in this book, but later, I guess. It is something to be said of like, we find out in this book why the gods can't be with the kids. There's a reason why. They're not just all awful, which most of them are. But I am curious in like the time that they spent together, the parents, that he did tell her all of this stuff just in case. Because I guess if you were going to like, if you actually love the person, you'd be like, okay, in case a fury comes, this is what you do. In case a minotaur comes, this is what you do. But I am curious, like, why does she know? If you know, don't tell us because we obviously don't remember.
Right. It's so funny. As you're speaking, I'm going, maybe they explain it later.
Yeah.
And I'm also a little blurry on why he in particular is not at Camp Half-Blood.
Yeah, I think he's too young. I think that's in here they said like he needs to mature a little bit. He needs to know a little bit more. He needs to prepare a little bit more. At least that's what Brunner's been doing. Like he could have taken him at any point, but he was training him and getting him ready.
Just with the knowledge.
Yeah, I think in the next episode that we do, I hope they explain Camp Half-Blood a little bit more because even the movie didn't explain it well. And I'm confused on like how it works. Like, do they just go there for a summer? And if they get determined, which means they find out who their parent is, then they can leave?
Or are they always there?
I don't know. I guess
mysteries abound.
So we do also find out that Sally cannot go to Camp Half-Blood. And she keeps telling Percy, just take Grover and go. Take Grover and go. And of course, he doesn't want to leave his mother. While he's fighting the bull, part of one of his horns comes off. He's able to stab the Minotaur with it.
But before that...
Oh, yeah, he kills his mom.
Yeah, there you go. Important.
I was like, wait, how did he kill his mom if he already died?
Important. Yeah. So the monster basically like chokes her and squishes her, and then she turns into golden light.
Yeah.
And
same thing happens to the Minotaur when he stabs him.
Yeah, and then Percy ends up stabbing him. So that was another moment that I looked at Noah and I was like, Percy's mom dies?
Yeah.
We were like, wait, what? We were both very confused. These early chapters, I think we have also been in the mist for far too long.
It's been like 15 years?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was
a long time.
I think I started reading them when I was in college.
It's been so long.
When I was like 18. So that was 20 years ago.
Yeah. It's been a long... Woof.
Yikes.
It's been a long time. So this is fun.
20 years didn't come out until 2005. Around then.
It's been fun rediscovering this story though.
Yeah.
Because it's good. And I like it. So Grover and Percy make their way to camp.
Yes. So chapter 5, I play Pinochle with a horse. So Chiron and Dionysus and Pinochle, oh my. Percy is told the truth about the gods and discovers there's more to Mr. Brunner than meets the eye. Oh my God. What is up with him? So this chapter really begins. So once Percy crosses the line into Camp Half-Blood, he collapses. And so he's being nursed back to health by various people that he has no idea who's nursing him back to health. But this is our first introduction to ambrosia and is it nectar? So that they taste like your most fond memories, your most delicious things. And so what is it, like buttered popcorn and chocolate chip cookies or something like that?
I think his is the home cooked cookies. The
cookies.
Yeah, the homemade cookies that I was going to say home cooked cookies that his mom made. That his mom made. Like that's the thing. And like he could have sworn that he was drinking a warm drink, but it wasn't. And it also seems very powerful because Grover's like, no more. Like you can't.
I think it's like you can get addicted to it.
Yeah, you can't have more than just that. But we also kind of get glimpses of our number 3 in this trio, Annabeth Chase. And we do hear in his like waking up and going back that like, you know, he's the chosen one. He must be. Then we hear somebody say, be quiet. Don't say anything. He's still kind of conscious. Like, shh.
What is it about not telling chosen ones that they're the chosen one?
For us, nothing to do with them. It's all because of us.
It's like maybe if you just told them from the beginning, then they would know and they'd be able to train appropriately.
I mean, maybe though, like maybe they don't train and they're just like, I'll be fine because like I'm the chosen one.
I guess that's something to be said about the hero's journey, right? Is that they have to go through trials and tribulations to fully rise to their potential and know who they really are. But like if you just told the guy, he'd be sad.
So we have this new baby little half-blood He's new to camp. He's new to everything, but he killed a Minotaur, which a lot of people at camp apparently cannot say that they've done because they've just been training. So already he's like the talk of the camp. But with that, typically brings like bullies and like eyes on you that you might not want. And Percy's not the type of person that would kind of want something like that.
Yeah, because I think that there are certain like gods and their descendants who feel jealous that they aren't the ones who rose to fame or that defeated the Minotaur or did whatever.
We do find out that there is like the big three, right? It's like Ares, Zeus, and Poseidon. And so like, especially people in those houses are going to be like, have bigger heads than most of the other people, or other people like vying to do better than them. So yeah, there's a whole hierarchy that goes on within these like 12 cabins or 12 houses or whatever you want to call them. It's interesting. He went from one school where it was like, oh, well, these people have money and I don't, to like kind of the same thing, but more like literal power and not just money.
Yeah. Percy can't catch a break, basically. No. And he's also, with these kids who have known about Camp Half-Blood, have been training. So they already have an upper hand on him and are holding it against him that he's almost had an adventure already.
I do love in this chapter because we get some more descriptions of Camp Half-Blood as we go. But I really like the descriptions. I think Rick, I'm using first name basis. Rick. I did meet him once. Had a book signing at the bookstore. Very nice guy. But he does great with the descriptions of this. And it very much seems like it was essentially like you put Greek architecture in this camp.
Yes.
In the woods in Long Island. And that's what it is. So there's 12 houses. He gets a little tour of Camp Half-Blood with, does Brunner give it to him or Grover?
So in this particular chapter, he just talks to Brunner and he meets Dionysus.
Right.
And he's told about Camp Half-Blood and why, and this is something that I appreciated. I remember even when I first read it, that Mount Olympus is not a stationary thing. It moves to wherever sort of Western culture is flourishing the most. And at this point in time, it was seen as New York. So it exists above the Empire State Building. And that's why Camp Half-Blood is out on Long Island.
They talk about it's like the heart of, the soul of Western civilization. And that's why they moved here. So they've moved a couple times.
Right.
And that's why you have like Zeus and you have like Odin and like, it's just wherever they've moved. Mm-hmm. And now currently they're just in America, which I do want to say, like, there is something funny for this whole thing, right? Of like, the kid knows nothing about anything. And then like, he's like going to be on a quest to save Western civilization. And it's like, okay, like, what exactly does that mean? I don't think they're the best, but it's fine.
That is unfortunately the weight that a hero has to have on their shoulders.
Oh my God, no, it's ask like, no questions and just do it.
Me. And we're also introduced to Mr. D,
Dionysus,
who is sort of an interesting character. You don't know whether to love him or to fear him. And so I think that we see that he can get a little scary. Percy says, I saw visions of grapevines choking unbelievers to death, drunken warriors insane with battle lust, sailors screaming as their hands turned to flippers, their faces elongating into dolphin snouts. I knew that if I pushed him, Mr. D would show me worse things. He would plant a disease in my brain that would leave me wearing a straitjacket in a rubber room for the rest of my life.
Yeah, he questioned him being a god. He was like, you a god? And then he shows him all that. And it's like, ooh.
Like, let me tell you a little story, kiddo.
Yeah, look into my eyes.
Dun, dun, dun.
So Dionysus is the god of wine, if you want to put it simply. And he does not want to be there. He's essentially like the headmaster, the camp leader, director of Camp Half-Blood. And he's there because he's in trouble. He's grounded, literally. For a couple centuries. So he had a chance before, and now he got grounded there.
He's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and now he's just a babysitter, and he does not like it.
No, he can't even like summon wine and stuff like that. He has to do Diet Cokes, which Grover eats the cans. I didn't know satyrs ate
I guess he's
metal.
Part goat?
Yeah, but do goats eat metal?
They eat trash.
Yeah.
They eat trash. That's aluminum? Like a thing. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
It's good for them, but for Grover, he loves it. Okay. And then, of course, we get the big reveal that Mr. Brunner steps out of his mystical wheelchair and he's actually Chiron.
Yes. And if you have read The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, you know that they're a big character in that one. They are the centaur that trained the heroes that we know in mythology, like Jason and Hercules. And now he's training Percy.
Did you cry after reading Song of Achilles like everybody else in the world?
I did.
Yes, so did I. All right, on to our last chapter for this episode, chapter 6. I become Supreme Lord of the Bathroom. A tour of Camp Half-Blood deems Percy undetermined and ends in a tidal wave of toilet water.
Yeah. So I like how we didn't necessarily know what was going to happen in chapter 6, but I like this stopping because one of the big things that's going to happen at camp is capture the flag. And this is leading into that.
Mm-hmm.
And right before we find too much information out, we get introduced to some of the cabin people and one of our antagonists that is at camp. I don't like her, but Annabeth Chase, lover.
Annabeth.
Did I say Annabelle? I think I said Annabelle before too.
Did you? I didn't catch it.
Maybe. Annabeth. Oh my God. I'm so sorry.
Okay. It's only the first episode. It's first episode.
But so Annabeth Chase, lover. I love how he describes her too. And he's like, she has, her hair is like curly, like a princess. And I'm like, a 12-year-old would say that. But I'm glad that he is like respectfully describing this person that he's obviously infatuated with. It's very cute.
Yes.
I like it.
There is that moment right away where you're going, this could be more.
Yeah.
We also learn a little bit about Grover and that he has to reach a goal and demonstrate great courage by succeeding as a keeper, which we're not really sure if he's done yet.
He's failed.
Yeah, basically.
And, he doesn't want to fail again because I guess he can't continue to be a keeper if he fails. And then what does a satyr do if they're not a keeper? He doesn't want to do it, obviously.
Right. And then, of course, we do go on the tour. And this is actually one of my favorite things, I think, in any sort of, kids book where there's people from different places or houses or whatever you want to call it. We get to see the very personality of those people that are living in that place. So we describe different houses. We meet, we see the Aphrodite cabin. We get to Ares' cabin, which is red and scary.
It looked like somebody with rage just painted it with red paint.
Yes.
Yeah.
War rage. And we also get to Hermes' cabin, where we meet Luke, who is 19 years old, has a beaded necklace, and is very welcoming to Percy as an undetermined and not an actual child of Hermes.
This is really fun too. Like thinking back on the setup for this stuff. Luke is important to the story. But I like how like the gods that they're under, it just like all makes sense. Hermes is a very interesting god. He's actually one of my favorite ones because he's so complicated and can be scary. And like his whole thing with like Circe, it's just really cool. But he's also the god of travelers. So that's why this cabin is one of the most packed cabins because until you're determined, meaning you know what cabin you should be in, everybody goes to Hermes' cabin. And also, Annabeth is there too, because she doesn't know. So it's really nice.
How is there no mythical determination DNA test? Some Maury Povich of the Greek gods that can say, you are the father.
I think it's like one of those things where it just adds to the story, right? It's like, who are they? Like, he felt a raging ocean in him. Like, they can't just ask questions like, do you feel any of these emotions? Would you describe a stomach ache like this or like this?
They don't have a BuzzFeed quiz, and that's our problem. That's what we're upset about. It is funny, though, because I think on the back of the book or the inside flap, whether you're reading paperback or hardcover, it literally says Percy Jackson, demigod, son of...
Yeah, I mean, it's not really a spoiler, right? It's like he's the son of Poseidon. I think it's like...
Oh, spoilers.
It's all over the place. And also this book is like 20 plus years old. So we know. But it is fun. It like adds to that thing, right? Of like, which house is he going to be in? Like reading it for the first time, you don't really know. And like, who are his friends going to be in? Yeah, it's really cool. I like it. But there's no space in there because there's so many people, so he has to sleep on the floor. But he does find out that there's like a capture the flag thing. It's like a big thing that's going to happen there. But we also do meet the jerk of the camp, Clarice. And of course she comes from Ares. Like that's her dad.
Yeah. Apparently she's giant.
Yeah.
She's
well, actually what I liked about the description of Clarice, again, I keep going back to the descriptions that he uses, is that like, she's not bad because she's big. She's not like mean because she's like a big person, or like she towers over people or whatever. It's like she abuses her power, yes. But like, I liked in the description that it wasn't like, oh, of course, because she's big, she's mean, or, like demonizing it in a way. She just chose to be mean.
Yeah. Well, the way I saw the description is him going, she's so strong.
Exactly.
She must be so strong because she looks like she could, lift a school bus or whatever it was. So I agree. I did like that. But of course but she is a bully.
Right.
And so she is our first real, other than the Minotaur and Gabe, antagonist here at Camp Half-Blood. And they do have a little bit of a showdown in the bathroom where she wants to give him a swirly.
Yeah, she goes and tries to give him a swirly, and he feels a tug in his stomach, which I love that descriptor, right? I think that's like something that you can as like a 12-year-old or us as adults, like could feel that. Like we get those feelings sometimes, and the toilets hose them down, and not just like spray water.
No,
literally pushes them out of the bathroom.
Geysers.
So all of the camp can see what Percy just did. If you don't know who his father is at this point, like, it's water.
Do you see what we're doing here?
But I love that Annabeth, one of her first things was like, I want you on my team. Like, she knew the second that she saw him, she's like, it has to, like, there's something important about you. And you're going to be on my team for this Capture the Flag.
And that's where we end.
That's where we end our first 6 chapters. I think it's such a great start, right? I think if the first 50 pages don't really hook you, maybe the book's not for you, but I wanted to keep reading. But because we're doing this book club, I was like, no.
Yes, we have our players in place now where we are very solidly on the hero's journey. And we are learning a little bit more about each of them as we go on. I'm very much looking forward to our next 6 chapters.
Oh, very exciting. Is there anything else that you wanted to say about these 6 chapters before we... Oh, go ahead. No.
I was going to say, I just think it's a solid introduction, and so it's bringing me joy, kind of feeling that joy again that I felt when I was first reading it. And the fact, like I said, that I've forgotten so many of the details, it is sort of like reading it new again.
For the first time.
Yeah.
I do like the detail that we find out that satyrs mature at like half the rate that people do. So like Grover's like in his 20s technically,
but still in 6th grade.
But he was in 6th grade. I like those little details that they give for the story. I'm very excited. Next episode, we'll post it in Discord or on socials, but quiz to find out what cabin that you're in. I'm very curious to see what cabin Derek is in.
Watch it be Aries.
It's always the nice ones.
I could be powerful. Thank you very much.
I feel like I'm going to be in a jerk cabin. I don't know. I'm scared.
That would be, maybe you'll be Hermes, perhaps.
No, well, I mean.
Well, come on, kombucha girl. He said kombucha.
Artemis? No. We'll see. Okay.
Yeah. But don't forget to tell us what you think about these first 6 chapters. You can do it on Discord, or you can email abonibbles@gmail.com.
ABO Nibbles. And then next week, we have our next chapters.
Exciting times ahead.
Goodbye.
Bye.